The rain had been falling since evening, turning the streets into rivers of silver under the glow of dim streetlights. Keanu Reeves stood at the corner of a narrow lane, his coat collar turned up against the wind, eyes scanning the crowd that hurried past. He wasn't here by chance. Somewhere out there, Ana de Armas was alone, and something about the way she had left earlier in the day didn't feel right. He had seen her smile in the morning, that quiet smile she gave when she wanted everyone to believe she was fine. But her eyes had told a different story. Tired, unfocused, as if she was carrying a weight no one else could see. They had been working together for weeks on a small community project, and Keanu had grown to notice every shift in her tone, every pause between her words. This morning she had avoided his gaze entirely. He replayed their last conversation in his mind. "You're sure you're okay?" he had asked. "Yeah," she had said, almost too quickly. "Just thinking about a few things." Then she had walked away, disappearing into the city crowd. By evening, she wasn't answering calls or messages. Not like her at all. That was when Keanu's concern turned into something heavier, an unease he couldn't shake. And so here he was, walking through rain-slicked streets, asking quiet questions to strangers, looking for any sign of her. He paused at a crosswalk, the sound of car tires hissing against wet asphalt filling the air. That's when a voice called out from behind, "Keanu?" He turned and saw Sandra Bullock standing under a black umbrella, her expression somewhere between worry and relief. She had clearly been searching too. "You're looking for her," Sandra said, her tone certain rather than questioning. "Yeah," he replied. "Have you seen her?" "No." Sandra shook her head, stepping closer. "But I think I know where she might have gone. And if I'm right, she won't want to be found." Those words hit Keanu like cold water. He knew Sandra had known Ana for longer than he had. Their connection was quiet but deep, built on trust. If Sandra thought she was in a place she didn't want anyone to find her, it meant this was more than just a bad day. They walked together, moving quickly down a side street that smelled faintly of rain and old stone. "She's been holding a lot in," Sandra said quietly, "and she's good at hiding it. Too good. But there's a spot she goes to when it all feels too heavy. It's not dangerous, just far. It's her way of vanishing without actually leaving." "Where?" Keanu asked. "The old train yard," Sandra replied. "Nobody goes there anymore. She sits on the rusted benches, watches the rain on the tracks. She once told me it's the only place where the noise in her head feels quieter." The image cut into Keanu's mind, a lone figure in the middle of abandoned tracks, rain falling, the city fading into the distance. He didn't like the thought of her sitting there, drenched and alone, carrying whatever it was she couldn't speak about. By the time they reached the train yard, the rain had grown heavier. The metal gates were half open, creaking in the wind. Inside, the tracks stretched into darkness, littered with fallen leaves and puddles that reflected the faint light of a nearby street lamp. And there she was. Ana sat on a wooden bench, her coat soaked through, hair clinging to her face. She didn't look up as they approached. Keanu stopped a few steps away, unsure whether to speak. Sandra moved past him, her umbrella lowering slightly, her voice gentle. "Ana," she said, "we've been looking for you." Ana's shoulders tensed. "I just needed to be away," she murmured, her voice barely audible under the rain. "Away from what?" Keanu asked softly. She finally looked up, her eyes red, though he couldn't tell if it was from tears or the cold. "Everything," she said. "It feels like no matter where I go, the noise follows me. People expect me to be something. And I don't even know if I am that person anymore." Keanu felt the weight of her words, the quiet honesty in them. He took a slow step forward, careful not to crowd her. "You don't have to be anything right now," he said. You just have to be here. With us. Anna's gaze shifted between them. Keanu standing steady in the rain, Sandra offering shelter with the umbrella. There was no judgment in their faces, only a quiet patience. A faint shiver ran through her. Sandra moved closer, placing the umbrella above her head. Keanu took off his coat and draped it over her shoulders, the fabric warm despite the rain. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The sound of rain on metal filled the air, the tracks stretching endlessly into the night. And slowly, the tightness in Anna's posture seemed to ease. Keanu glanced at Sandra, who gave a small nod. They weren't here to demand explanations. They were here to remind her she wasn't alone. But deep down, Keanu knew this night was... Whatever it wasn't over. This was only the beginning. The rain had slowed by the time they left the train yard. Puddles glimmered under the faint streetlights, and the air was thick with the scent of wet earth and rust. Keanu walked on one side of Anna, Sandra on the other, as if the three of them were tethered by something unseen. Anna kept her eyes down, her hands hidden inside the sleeves of Keanu's coat. She didn't speak, and they didn't push her. The silence wasn't awkward. It was fragile, like a glass surface you didn't dare disturb. When they reached a small cafe tucked between two old buildings, Sandra stopped. "Let's go in," she said softly. "We'll get warm, and you can have something hot." Anna hesitated, but the promise of warmth and a break from the cold finally made her nod. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of coffee and freshly baked bread. Dim lamps cast a golden glow across wooden tables, and the low hum of quiet conversations filled the space. They found a booth in the back, away from the other customers. A waitress came over with a gentle smile. "What can I get you?" "Tea," Anna said after a moment. "Make it 2, Sandra added. Keanu ordered a coffee, his gaze drifting back to Anna as the waitress left. The steam from the tea rose between them, but still, no one asked the questions that hovered in the air. Sandra broke the silence first. "You've been carrying something for a while, haven't you?" Anna didn't look up. "Maybe. But talking about it doesn't fix anything." "Sometimes it doesn't have to," Sandra replied. "Sometimes it's just about not carrying it alone." Keanu leaned back, his voice calm. "We're not here to fix you, Anna. We're here to be with you." Her fingers tightened around the mug. "That's the thing. I don't know if I deserve that." Those words made Sandra's jaw tighten, but she kept her tone gentle. "Who told you that?" Anna was quiet for a long moment before she answered. "Life. People. Maybe me." Keanu watched her, realizing this wasn't just about one bad night or a single moment of weakness. This was about years of quiet battles no one else had seen. He remembered how she was on set, professional, kind, always ready with a smile. Most people thought that meant she was fine. But now he saw it differently. She wasn't smiling because she was fine. She was smiling so no one would look too closely. The cafe door opened, letting in a gust of cold air. For a moment, Anna's eyes flicked toward the entrance, her shoulders tensing as a group of people came in. Keanu noticed, filing it away silently. Sandra leaned forward. "Listen, you don't have to tell us everything tonight, but you need to know you're not invisible to us. We see you." Anna finally met her eyes, something uncertain but grateful in her expression. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Of what?" Keanu asked. "Of being a burden. Of people leaving if I'm not easy to be around." Keanu didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and took out a small, folded piece of paper. He placed it on the table and slid it toward her. "What's this?" she asked. "An address," Keanu said. It's a place I go when I can't find my footing. It's quiet. It's safe. You don't have to go there, but I want you to know it's yours if you need it." She stared at the paper, not touching it yet. "We're not going anywhere," Sandra added, her voice steady. "You don't have to earn that. You just have to believe it." For the first time that night, Anna gave a small, almost shy smile. "You two are something else." Keanu shook his head. "No, we're just people who care." They stayed there until the rain outside stopped completely, until the cafe began closing and the streets emptied. And though she hadn't told them everything, Anna walked out with them that night knowing that whatever came next, she didn't have to face it alone. What none of them knew was that someone had been watching them from across the street. The night air was crisp now that the rain had cleared. Streetlights hummed faintly, casting soft pools of light along the empty road. Anna walked between Keanu and Sandra, her steps slower than theirs, as if each one took more effort than she wanted to admit. They didn't talk much. There was comfort in the quiet, but Keanu's senses kept flicking to the edges of the street, scanning the shadows. It wasn't paranoia. It was instinct. Something felt off, like they were being followed. At the far end of the block, a dark figure stood near a lamppost, still as stone. Keanu noticed them first. Tall, wearing a hood, their face hidden in shadow. They weren't smoking. They weren't on a phone. They were just watching. Keanu slowed his pace slightly, stepping a little closer to Anna. Sandra's eyes followed his, and when she spotted the figure, her jaw tightened. She didn't say anything aloud, but the look she gave him was enough. They were both thinking the same thing. "Maybe we should take the long way back," Keanu said casually, trying not to make it sound urgent. "Sure," Sandra replied quickly, adjusting her umbrella even though the rain had stopped. Anna glanced between them. "What's going on?" "Nothing," Sandra said lightly. "Just thought the other street might be nicer." But Anna didn't buy it. Her gaze drifted to the figure in the distance. For a moment, her breath caught. "I know him," she whispered. Keanu's eyes narrowed. "Who is he?" Anna shook her head, her face pale. "I can't explain here. Just, please, let's go." They turned onto a narrower side street, their footsteps echoing softly on the wet pavement, but the sense of being watched didn't fade. It grew heavier. Keanu glanced back once and saw the hooded figure following at a slow, deliberate pace, never getting closer, never falling behind. Sandra kept her voice low. "Is he dangerous?" Anna hesitated. "He shouldn't be. But the last time I saw him, it didn't end well." That was all she said, but it was enough to make Keanu's jaw set in quiet resolve. Halfway down the street, they passed a closed bookstore. Keanu slowed his steps until Anna and Sandra were a few paces ahead. Then, without turning his head, he spoke quietly to Sandra. "Take her to my place. Don't stop. Don't look back." "And you?" Sandra asked. "I'll talk to him." Anna stopped in her tracks. "Keanu, no." "It's okay," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I just want to make sure everything's fine." Reluctantly, Sandra guided Anna forward, their footsteps fading into the quiet. Keanu turned and began walking toward the figure. As he approached, the man lifted his head slightly, revealing sharp eyes under the hood. "You're looking for trouble?" Keanu asked evenly. The man's lips curled into a faint, unsettling smile. "Not trouble, just someone I used to know." "She doesn't want to see you," Keanu replied. "Maybe, but she doesn't get to decide that," the man said. Keanu's voice hardened. "Yes, she does." For a moment they just stared at each other, the silence heavy between them. Then the man laughed quietly, almost to himself, and stepped back into the shadows. Tell her I'll be around, he said, before vanishing into the alley. Keanu stood there for a few seconds, watching the dark. There was something in that man's tone, something that made him certain this wasn't the last time they'd see him. When Keanu caught up to Sandra and Anna, she was pale and quiet, her hands shaking slightly. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the window of Keanu's small kitchen, warming the wooden table where Anna sat with a mug of tea cradled in her hands. Her hair was still damp from the shower, loose strands falling across her face. She looked calmer than the night before, but there was a tension in her eyes, as if she was bracing herself for a conversation she didn't want to have. Sandra sat across from her, her fingers wrapped around a coffee cup, watching quietly. Keanu moved between the stove and the counter, making breakfast without rushing. The three of them hadn't spoken much since waking. Finally, Keanu broke the silence. "We need to talk about last night." Anna's gaze dropped to the table. "I know." Sandra's voice was gentle. "You said you knew him. That man in the street. Who is he?" Anna hesitated for a long time. "His name is Lucas. We worked together years ago, before I moved here. He was a friend at first. Then, not." Keanu stopped what he was doing and leaned against the counter, his attention fully on her. "Not how?" "He changed," she said quietly. "He started showing up everywhere I went, calling me even when I didn't answer. He'd get angry if I didn't meet him. At first, I told myself it wasn't serious, that maybe I was overreacting. But then he came to my home one night. He didn't hurt me, but the way he looked at me, it was like I wasn't a person anymore. Just something he wanted to control." Sandra's hand tightened around her mug. "Did you ever tell anyone?" "I moved," Anna replied. "Changed my number. I thought he was gone. But now—" She swallowed hard. "Now he's here." Keanu's voice was calm but firm. "You're safe here. We won't let him get near you." Anna shook her head slightly. "You can't promise that. People like him, they don't just leave." The weight in the room grew heavier, but Keanu didn't look away from her. "Then we make sure he has no reason to come close." Sandra glanced between them. "Keanu, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we don't wait for him to make the next move." Anna looked up, startled. "You're not going to confront him again, are you?" "Not unless I have to," Keanu said. "But I want to know where he's staying, what he's doing. People like that slip in and out of the dark because no one is paying attention. We're going to pay attention." Sandra leaned back, considering. "And if we find him?" "Then he learns the one thing he doesn't understand yet," Keanu replied. "That you're not alone." Anna's eyes softened at that, but there was still fear behind them. "I don't want anyone hurt because of me." "It's not about hurt," Keanu said. "It's about making sure you can live without looking over your shoulder." They spent most of the day inside, the atmosphere a mix of warmth and unease. Keanu made calls to a few quiet contacts, people who knew how to find answers without drawing attention. Sandra stayed close to Anna, distracting her with conversation when the silence grew too heavy. By late afternoon, Keanu's phone buzzed. He stepped into the hallway to answer it. "Reeves," a voice on the other end said. "I've got a location. Small apartment above a hardware store, 2 streets from where you saw him. Hasn't been there long, but he's been asking around. About her." Keanu thanked them and hung up. When he returned to the kitchen, both women looked up at him, waiting. "We know where he is," he said. Anna's face went pale. "Keanu—" "No," he said gently. "We're not going there tonight. But now we know. and that means we're not blind anymore. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the room. Sandra met Keanu's eyes and gave a small nod. They both understood. Knowing where Lucas was meant they could prepare. But somewhere deep in the night was quiet in a way that didn't feel safe. The kind of quiet that made you notice every creak of the floorboards and every whisper of wind against the windows. Keanu sat in the living room, a lamp casting a soft pool of light over the table in front of him. He wasn't reading or watching TV, just sitting, listening. In the next room, Anna had finally fallen asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. Sandra sat nearby in an armchair, flipping through a book without really reading it. They were all pretending this was a normal night, but the tension sat in the air like a held breath. Then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate taps against the front door. Keanu's head lifted instantly. Sandra froze, her fingers still on the page. Anna stirred in her sleep, but didn't wake. Keanu stood, moving silently to the door. He didn't open it. He looked through the peephole. The hallway outside was empty. No footsteps, no movement. He waited. Another knock. This time it came from the back door. Keanu moved quickly through the apartment, signaling Sandra to stay put. When he reached the kitchen and looked toward the back entrance, he saw a folded piece of paper slipped under the door. He picked it up. On the paper, in careful block letters, was written, "You can't keep her forever." Keanu's jaw tightened. He glanced toward the window above the sink and caught the faintest glimpse of movement in the alley before it vanished into the darkness. When he returned to the living room, Sandra's eyes searched his face. Was it him? Keanu didn't answer right away. "Yeah." Sandra's voice dropped lower. "We need to call the police." "We can," Keanu said slowly. "But he's smart. By the time they get here, he'll be long gone, and he'll know we're reacting instead of acting." Anna shifted on the couch, waking slowly. "What's going on?" "Nothing you need to worry about right now," Keanu said gently, but his voice held a firmness that made her frown. She sat up, pulling the blanket tighter. "Was it him?" Keanu met her gaze. "Yes." Her hands trembled slightly. "Keanu, he's not going to stop." "Then we don't stop either," Keanu replied. They didn't sleep much after that. Keanu stayed by the window, watching the street below. Sandra kept her phone within reach. Anna sat quietly for a while before moving to the kitchen to make tea, as if doing something ordinary might break the grip of fear in the room. Around midnight, Keanu's phone buzzed again. It was one of his contacts. "Reeves, you should know. He's been talking to people, asking if you live here, asking about her, and he's not hiding it. It's like he wants you to know." Keanu hung up, his mind already moving. Lucas wasn't just stalking Anna. He was trying to draw them into a confrontation. "What are you thinking?" Sandra asked quietly. "I'm thinking we stop waiting for him to come to the door," Keanu said. "If he wants us to find him, maybe it's time we do." Anna shook her head, fear flashing in her eyes. "Keanu, please." He stepped closer, his voice calm. "I'm not going after him to fight. I'm going to end this before it gets worse." Sandra looked at him for a long moment, then stood. "You're not going alone." Keanu almost argued, but stopped when he saw the determination in her face. And so, just after 1 a.m, the 3 of them stepped out into the sleeping city, their breaths forming pale clouds in the cold air. They didn't know exactly how the night would end, but one The streets were almost empty, the quiet broken only by the distant hum of traffic. The city looked different at this hour, colder, sharper, like it was hiding secrets in the shadows. Keanu walked ahead, scanning every corner and alley. Sandra stayed close to Anna, her hand brushing against her arm now and then, a small reminder that she wasn't alone. They followed the faint trail left by Keanu's contacts, places Lucas had been seen, corners where he'd asked about Anna. It led them toward the older part of the city, where the buildings leaned close together and the streetlights barely reached the pavement. When they turned a corner, Keanu stopped. Lucas was there. Leaning against the wall of a closed hardware store, his hood down now, his face calm in a way that didn't match the tension in the air. He didn't move when he saw them. "You came," he said, his voice low but clear. "You made it impossible not to," Keanu replied, stepping between him and Anna. Lucas's eyes flicked to her, and for a second, a faint smile touched his lips. "We have unfinished business." Anna's voice shook, but she stepped forward just enough for her words to carry. "No, Lucas. Whatever you think this is, it's over. It was over years ago." He tilted his head. "You don't get to decide that." Keanu's voice was calm but carried steel. "Yes, she does. And you're going to leave her alone." Lucas's gaze locked on Keanu. "Or what? You'll stand here every day for the rest of her life?" "If I have to," Keanu said without hesitation. Something in Lucas's eyes shifted, an edge of frustration cutting through his calm. "You don't know what she's done. You don't know the things she hides." Sandra stepped forward, her tone sharp. "I don't care what you think you know. I care about the fact that you've been following her, threatening her, trying to control her. And that stops now." Lucas's attention moved between them, and for the first time, he seemed to hesitate. The quiet street felt heavier, the air almost buzzing with the choice that hung between them. Finally, Keanu took a slow step closer, his voice dropping. "You want control. Here's the truth. You don't have any. Not anymore. The moment you started following her, the moment you started leaving notes, you lost. Because now every step you take, every corner you turn, someone will be watching you. And not just me." Lucas's jaw tightened. Anna's voice came then, steady despite the tremor in her hands. "You don't get to write my story anymore, Lucas. You're not part of my life, and you never will be again. Whatever you think you're owed, you're not getting it from me." The silence stretched, the cold air pressing in. Then Lucas let out a short, humorless laugh. "Fine. You've made your choice." He stepped back into the shadow of the alley. "But remember, you can't protect her from everything." And then he was gone, swallowed by the dark. Keanu stayed still for a moment, listening for footsteps that never came. When he finally turned back, Anna was standing straight, her shoulders squared, her breathing steady. "It's over," he said. She shook her head slightly. "Maybe not forever, but for now." They walked back through the quiet streets, the tension slowly easing with each step. When they reached Keanu's place, the first faint light of dawn was touching the horizon. Inside, Anna sat at the kitchen table, staring at the steam rising from a fresh cup of tea. Sandra sat beside her, silent but close. Keanu stood by the window, watching the sky shift from gray to pale gold. Anna finally spoke. "Thank you. Both of you. I don't know what I would have done alone." Sandra smiled faintly. "That's the thing. You're not alone." Keanu turned from the window, his voice quiet but certain. "And you never will be." The city outside began to wake, its noise slowly building. But inside, the three of them sat in a small circle of peace, knowing that while